Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Mandy Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Mandy Harvey. Mandy and I are going to be talking on the topic, how to achieve healing from trauma through emotional mastery. Welcome, Mandy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Yes, I spend a lot of time talking about trauma in the show because apparently, most of us have it.
Yes.
Yeah, childhood trauma, relational trauma, apparently we can't go through life without experiences. So I love the fact that a lot of coaches now are focusing on trauma, and yeah, you have a great spin on it. So I'd love to introduce that to you guys, to your listeners. So let me set the tone by giving you a short bio of Mandy. Mandy Harvey is a leader in the field of trauma healing who specializes as a healing guide for highly sensitive, overachieving coaches. And she's the creator of the Love Methodology, a soothing way to heal from any trauma. Mandy's on a mission to guide purpose-driven women to live a life free from unresolved trauma, stress, and chronic health issues. And she leads them through a 4-step process to reprogram their relationship with themselves, their body, and their healing. Mandy knows the trauma healing process she shares helps coaches and business owners go from overwhelm and stress to being able to show up more powerfully for their clients and communities so they can truly make the impact they desire. Yep. As coaches, that's what we want to do. We want to make an impact with our world. And it starts with us being emotionally healthy.
It
Which we know
does.
good to anybody, right? All right. So, Mandy, this is pretty specific work. So,
Yeah.
tell us your journey. How did you get into this work?
Yeah. Well, I got into this work because of my own trauma and my own healing process. I'm someone who grew up in trauma. I say I was just kind of born into it. I grew up in a home with a single mother who had her own traumas. And as a result, that affected my experience with the world. She sometimes was there, she sometimes wasn't. There wasn't always love. She often had men in her world that were very abusive, and that abuse was often directed towards me. And at the age of 14, she had remarried a couple of times in my childhood, but at the age of 14, her and the man that she was married to took their lives. And
Wow.
it was a result of me coming forward, sharing with a counselor at school what had been going on in my home as it related to sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and
Look at me. I've got goosebumps all over here, girl.
yeah, I know.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Similar to my story. Go on.
Is it? Oh, wow. So yeah, my whole life, my whole world instantly changed. I was placed in a home with my with family members, and kind of grew up with family still, but I was very deeply affected, as you can imagine, by that experience. That was actually the start of high school. It was also the start of therapy for me. And I spent a couple of years in therapy doing EMDR work, really processing the grief and the guilt, because I felt very guilty.
I was just about to ask you that, but I was going to wait for you to finish. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, gosh, that's huge guilt. Huge.
very much so. I
Yeah.
really took on the belief through that guilt, through that process, that I couldn't trust my intuition, that my ability to make a choice for myself would turn out into disaster. And I held that belief for a very long time through my adult years. But as a child, I was trying to navigate this healing and hit a wall. At a certain point, I just couldn't talk about it anymore. My body started to ache. Every day I woke up in pain. physical pain, emotional pain. And I just started to get numb and number and number. And it was just like I had no relation to the world anymore. All I could see was this grief, it felt like I was being sucked down into this black hole. Like all I could see and feel was this guilt, this pain, this suffering, this thought of, I just want to be back with my mom, even though it was
Ah,
traumatic, even though it was
wow.
abusive and neglectful. That's all I knew. And for me, that felt like love, as
Yes,
crazy as that sounds.
trust me, I'm in the foster care system right now, and I'm a foster mom. I adopted kids from the foster care system, and regardless of what the parents did to the children, because in order for them to be removed from the home,
Yeah.
there had to be some dysfunction, there had to be,
Yeah.
abuse, and they all would trade that in a minute to be back with their
Yes.
family. So I understand that totally. But you are one of the few that actually speak about that abuse. Most
Mm,
of us, like myself, I was abused as a child as well, and I didn't speak about it until I was 40. and I know from being in this space and the research that I do that most kids don't tell. So
yeah.
the fact that you told um, was good, but then yeah, you had to bear the guilt of maybe you shouldn't have said anything.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
I told, and all of a sudden, I'm being shown in the real world examples that led to destruction of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
another critical moment in my development that infected me as an adult was I can't make good choices. I make bad choices. I make choices that end up in disaster. And
So
so,
you think that you made the wrong choice even now, how
no,
many years
not,
later?
no,
Okay.
no. Now I know it was the right decision. But then as a
Right.
child and as a young
Okay.
adult, I really still believed because I was still living in that trauma, that was the wrong thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So what helped you? Because it sounded like, what you said a minute ago, that even though you started therapy at 14, years later, you were still in this black hole, feeling that you were stuck in and you were numb. What was the bridge?
Well, it kind of came through devastation. And that is, I got to a point where I felt like my life was no longer worthy here. And I attempted to take my own life.
Wow.
And I had a near death experience through that. And I don't associate to any religion, but I am very spiritual. And it's because of that experience. I had taken a whole bottle of sleeping pills one day at school and thought, this will be the easiest way. All I want is just to see my mom, and this
Mm,
will get me to it. And
mhm.
I passed out. I don't remember passing out, but the only thing I remember is feeling like walked into this like beautiful golden space. Like it's hard to describe it. It was like the most loving, comforting, golden space you could just imagine what that'd be like and times it by a billion. That's how it felt like. And I thought, oh my gosh, I made it. I'm going to get to see my mom. I'm so excited. I was so relieved. And then I felt a hand on my heart space, a hand on my chest. And I heard the words, it's not your time. And I was being pushed away from that light and woke up. And it was the end of the school day. Kids were rushing out of school. And I just was so disoriented and confused and angry. And I was like, what?
I want to go back.
No, I don't want this life. Like, I don't want to be here.
Wow.
I don't want to be here. And so I held a lot of anger. And as I made my way home, I started to, uh, I was getting more and more disoriented and I was seeing things and I was like, okay, I need to call the 911 and get some help and support. So they admitted me to ICU.
Wow.
They admitted me for a period of time to ICU to monitor me and try and cleanse my body of the
Mhm.
toxins. And then I was admitted to a mental institution for a period of time where I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I
Mm.
was put on medication, and I was, instantly put into a different treatment process of constant connection with psychologists, constant group conversations. It was a completely different environment, obviously, than the home that I was in. And although I didn't want to be here still, even when I was there, I was like, I don't belong in this place. I just wanted to be with my mom. Like, why can't people understand this? It really was
No,
a
because killing yourself is never the answer. That's why they don't
no.
understand.
Yes, right. I know this. Now I hold so
I
much
know. I'm
compassion.
just interjecting. I know. I understand what you're saying. Right. Go ahead.
Yes, it isn't. It isn't
Mhm.
the answer. And although I didn't want to be there, it really was a blessing in my healing process, because by the time I left, I had more ability to control my feelings, to manage my depression. I was on antidepressants for my entire high school career. By the time I graduated high school, I also graduated off of medication and I graduated out of therapy. And I was able to live and function in the world without feeling like I had this cloud over my life. And although I graduated and I was done, I was like, I'm right. I'm 18. I'm going to live my life, do my things. I still wasn't done healing, but it was the first
Start.
step in that process, right?
From the start.
Yeah.
Well, being in this space and being a learner and having all these beautiful conversations every week, there are certain things that I have become to believe. And one of the things that I believe is that we choose our parents, and we choose them because of our purpose and what we needed to do. And a couple of things in your story is different than a lot of the times how it works, because I said I'm in this space. Um, most kids don't tell, number one. So you told, and then you had tragedy, right? I'm not sure if that was part of the plan or not. But then again, I told you that um that I was a foster mom, and the kids that come into foster care, and I adopted a couple of them, three to be exact.
Okay.
But two of them were very emotionally traumatized and disturbed or whatever. And we had to put them in the same um, home thing that you talked about. It was called, living in care, where they had to go through. They stayed in there for about a year, twice.
Yeah.
Um, you came out of that learning something. They didn't. In fact, I was just speaking about it a couple of days ago,
Mm,
where they learned to just tell people what they wanted to hear.
yeah.
They didn't, they weren't ready to accept it. They weren't ready. They were still focused in on, you wanted to go to your mom because your mom was dead. They wanted to go to their mom because their mom was alive. And
Yeah.
that's the reason for their
Yeah.
behavior. They didn't
Yeah.
want to be with me. They were not in foster care anymore. I adopted them. They didn't want me as their mom. They wanted to go to their mom. Their whole emphasis was,
Yeah.
I want to go to my mom. I don't want to wait until I'm 18. I want to go now. And this is my behavior. I'm going to run away. I'm going to do all these different things. But they didn't get anything of it, but you did. So it's amazing how, God, you said you're not religious, but I am, how God puts us through
Yeah.
the fire,
Yes.
like the Jews in the wilderness, in order to get to what he needs you to be. And that was your journey. It was a
Yes.
painful journey, but now I'm almost positive that because of that pain, you help other women because you've been through it. You're not reading about it, you've experienced it. So
Yeah.
so that's beautiful. All right, so keep going with your story, because
Yeah.
this was the start of the therapy. How did you get on
Yeah.
to um, your process of the love methodology? How did
Yeah.
love play into your therapy?
Yes. Well, it's something actually, it wasn't named love. So I had named this after a year or so of doing this work myself, but my therapist in my late 30s, that the therapist I was working with really was going through this process with me over and over again. And as once I was done with that, as I was reflecting, I was like, oh my gosh, these are the steps of like really what I went through. And that's kind of the short version of how it went. But in my late 30s, I was a woman who was in corporate America. I had a very high stressful job. I had two small kiddos. I had two stepdaughters at the time. They were in their late teens, and I was at a point in time where I was really repressing my feelings. I was repressing my emotions. I was really good at hiding anger. I really prided myself in never feeling angry at all. Like, oh, look, I can be cool
You
as a
think you
cucumber.
you think you were removed from your emotions, you couldn't feel it, or you felt it but suppressed it?
Suppressed it for sure.
Okay, you felt it. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Bits
Well,
and
that's actually
pieces.
good, because there's some people that can't they're actually removed from
Yes.
their emotions. They can't feel it. Okay.
Yes. At that point in my life, I was starting to feel bits and pieces of anger like I had never before. But I
Right.
was like, oh, I don't want to feel that. Like, stuff that in a
Good.
closet.
Good.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but there was a moment, a critical moment that really changed and got me into that work as a receiver of the work before I started to offer it in my business. Um, there was a moment when my daughter, my youngest daughter, who she is someone who exudes emotion from one side of the scale to the other side of the scale, from like pure bliss and joy to pure anger and
Wow.
rage. I mean, she
Wow.
has a wide spectrum. And anytime she was over in this rage part of her spectrum, I would get so uncomfortable and be like, anything I can do to not let her feel that would be helpful, because it would make me so anxious. And I didn't quite understand why, but I did everything I could to not get her to that place, which isn't
Mhm.
healthy for her. Um, she was in a moment of pure temper tantrum, screaming. She was maybe 3 or 4, just like letting it all out, just raging. Maybe she was 5. And she was really mad about something insignificant. And I had my back to her and I was washing the dishes, and I could feel like a wave, this heat moving through my body. And as it was getting higher and higher up, I could just, it was like fire in my body. And I could feel the rage. Like I could feel my jaw get super tight. Like, oh my God, I could just scream at her right now. Like, she needs to shut up. And I'm washing the dishes, trying to ignore it, trying to ignore it. And she's just letting loose. And finally, I turned around. I had a glass in my hand and I threw it at her feet. And I said, shut. And it was the first time I'd ever screamed at her. And the look on her face was just pure
You right.
shock. Like, oh my
I can
God, what just,
actually visualize that.
yes, like, oh my gosh, mom, what? And I started crying and she was crying. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm a bad person. I didn't mean to upset you. Like, so we're trying to pick up the glass and I'm crying and thinking, like, what is happening? What is going on in me that I immediately revert, and like this feeling? What is this feeling in my body? So I sought out somatic experiencing therapy work, which
So
is
were you
all.
did you stop your original therapy at this point, or you
So throughout my adult years, I had been in therapy off and
okay.
on. So at this
Okay.
point in time, I had not been to therapy in a while,
Okay.
but I had
Right.
at that point been through, over the last 20 years, I'd been through multiple forms of talk therapy, processing my abuse, processing the anger towards my mom, processing my childhood over and over again. But this was a whole different level. And this is why I knew I needed something different, because I'd been talking about my story for 20 years and I could intellectualize it really simply and be like, I know this is why I'm upset. And, I'm like doing the job for the therapist, right? But this was like a whole different level of awareness that somehow I was holding more in my body than I was able to reach through just talking. So when I went through and sought out help, it was to see someone who was trained in somatic experiencing, which is more of a body-based nervous system process of helping you identify where you're holding the trauma in your body,
Yeah.
because our body has a different story than our minds do about what
Yeah.
happened to us.
Right.
And
I do a meditation every day now from Joe Dispenza. It's called Getting the Mind Out of the Body.
oh
And
yes,
it's
I
the
love
same
it.
energy he's talking about, actually.
Yes.
He's moving that energy up through, what is it called now? I'm forgetting what it's called now, but it's like a snake, whatever that's,
Mm,
it starts with a K. But anyway, it goes up to your body, right?
okay.
Anyway,
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
right.
We hold things in our bodies that we may not even really be aware of, that influence how we show up, our behavior, our thoughts, our actions. But for me, it was once I started that therapy and I went through it for about 2.5 years, I healed more than I did in 20 years of just talking about it. And it really gave me the tools to understand how to connect to my body, because up to that point, I was like a head walking around in the world. I had disconnected from my body
Yeah,
because it had,
which is why I asked you the question earlier, if you can actually feel anger, because a lot of, when you go through trauma, you're actually can't feel your emotions. In fact, one of my twins, they put her on the spectrum of, psychopathic, because she couldn't feel any of her emotions.
yeah. For a
Yeah,
long time, I couldn't. And I think I started to feel it as I was leading up to this point, because it was like, now's the time. You got to
right.
heal this in your body. So yeah, I spent 2.5 years really learning how to navigate what I was holding on to in my body, navigate the anger I felt about the abuse I went through, and the experiences I had in childhood, and anger that I couldn't communicate properly in my adult life, and anger that, I had autoimmune conditions by this
Wow.
point, and I had chronic health issues, and
Wow.
I felt like my life was crumbling, and I was like,
Yeah,
this picture of who I thought I was going to be is different, and who am I without this trauma, and all
yeah,
these identity things would show up. And so that's really where, as I finished that and was able to really feel more in control of myself and in my body than ever before, I started to reflect on that process and was like, oh my gosh, I
that's
call it
beautiful.
love,
Yeah,
because we're
I
giving
love that.
ourselves
Yeah,
love that we need.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Now, the question, the circle back I have here is because when the situation happened with your mom, your predominant feeling was guilt. Where do you think the anger came from? That's just interesting that the anger became your biggest emotion.
Well, as a child, I never was, um, it was never explicitly explained, but I could never really express anything but acceptance and be like the peacemaker in my home. So my the man that she was married to, that took his life with her. They were married for a while, and he was a police officer and was very manipulative and would use his authority against me. And so for me to express anger and rage at, I'm not going to go along with this, was not safe for me. And
Okay,
so I had to really
impressive.
disconnect from that.
Okay, so that's where that came up from. Wow, wow, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So you moved on to work with women. I've got a whole list here of
Yeah.
women, chronically stressed women who suffer from anxiety, stress, and overwhelm on a consistent basis. And they lack energy and vitality. And they have problem with boundaries because they're people pleasing and they
Yes.
deprioritize your needs.
Yeah.
So these are all results of, probably childhood trauma. Let's put a label on it.
Yeah.
So how do you heal them or help them heal from their stress and trauma using your methodology?
Yeah. So the methodology LOVE is an acronym. It's 4 steps. It stands for listen to the thoughts, the beliefs that that run through your mind on a consistent basis. Observe where you hold them in your body. Where's the predominant location where you hold that thought of I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough or whatever that thought is. V is validate it. So oftentimes we're not taught to validate our emotions or our experiences, which sometimes this is a hard step for people, but this is all about if I feel that unworthiness in my heart space, it's about teaching people how to have compassion for that part that's feeling very unworthy and very unseen. It's giving them a language to tap into that part of them so they can make a connection and start to repair and build trust and heal that part and integrate it back into their core self. E is experience. So, experience meaning, or sorry, E is embrace with love. So, what does that part need? If I was just to tune in, that part that's feeling unworthy, that's feeling very heavy in my chest, when I give it a validation and say, you're right, I can understand why you'd feel that way. What is it you need from me right now? That kind of sounds a little weird to talk to ourselves like that, but our bodies really hold a lot of wisdom and insight into actually what we need in the moment. So if it's like, I just feel like I need a hug, you know, let's go find someone who can really give you a hug or give yourself a hug. Or, I feel like I need to just sit outside and maybe, go on a walk. Great. Let's go do that. But it's in the process of meeting our needs in the moment, learning how to ask what we need and meeting those needs that starts to build up trust in our experiences and trust in that we know what we need and we have the power to be able to give that to ourselves. So using that methodology, generally when I work with someone, I start with helping them understand because awareness is the greatest step we can take before we can actually do the work.
Yeah.
Is helping them build awareness around what's the state of their nervous system today, and helping them understand when I'm in an environment like this, I I know I'm stressed because my body feels like this, or I feel like I always get a headache every time I'm around this one person, or I don't feel like I can talk or communicate around this experience. Gaining awareness around how we're interacting in the world through our nervous systems, it becomes the blueprint for, okay, where are we at today and how can we start to build in. So if I'm someone who's been traumatized and holds a lot of stress and anxiety in my body, I'm most likely in a sympathetic nervous system state. In
Mm-hmm.
order for us to heal and go deeper into some of the traumas, we have to slowly help our nervous system be able to hold both the stress and the peace and calm. When we're really stressed, we often aren't able to have the capacity to hold a peaceful experience. We naturally pull back into what we've known for years. And so we might work together to build up a little bit more capacity to hold something that feels very peaceful and calm, so that when we start to talk about things that are more activating in our system, we have a place to come back to that feels peace and calm in our body. And then it's a slow back and forth of let's talk about something that's really a great memory. Let's build that memory into your body. All right, now tell me a little bit about what happened in your childhood. Oh, I'm starting to feel really stressed. I can feel it in my chest. Okay, great. Let's let that be here for a minute. Just let it be here and give it some compassion and then love. Let it know that we can see it. And then
Mm-hmm.
let's go back to something that feels really peaceful. And it's doing that slowly and gently over time that builds up the resilience in our nervous system to be able to go deeper into more and more triggering and activating work. Because if someone came into my space and said, hey, I want to work on my childhood, and I have all this abuse and I just want to talk about it. I just want to get it over with. And we can get this done in a couple sessions, right? That actually would be more triggering and no work would get done. No healing would get done because the nervous system is going to react to being
Mhm.
poked and prodded. And,
Yeah.
we're not doing surgery here. We're slowly trying to allow our
Yeah.
bodies to
Mhm.
regulate and settle into a place before we start to get any deeper.
Wow, that's pretty good. I like that. I can, yeah, yeah, I had a couple of sessions with a therapist, and that's basically what she told me to do. She just to allow the emotions, you feel the emotions. If you think you've stuffed something down, to just feel it and and then release it. Like, you know, and that's probably what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You're allowing them to be comfortable with the emotion or whatever, and then even though you didn't use the word release, but when you're going back to a piece, you are kind of
Yes.
like
Yes.
giving it some love,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, because when your nervous system is so constricted and tense and stress, we can't release anything. Our bodies are naturally self-protective. So it's trying to protect you from anything that feels unsettling. That's why that calm and peace feeling is so important to feel in our bodies. Because once we get to there, then it's like, our body can slow down, our heart rate slows down, our cells relax, our cells open up, and then that energy, that emotion can start to release out of the body.
It starts to go in. Yes, I love that. I'm getting the mental picture of maybe a flower opening up and
Yes.
getting the sunshine, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Great
Exactly.
analogy. Right, 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 right.
Yes.
All right. Now you talk about a language of to heal physical and emotional wounds. So what is the language that we're using?
Well, the language is a little bit different for everyone. And what I mean by that is my nervous system talks to me in a very specific way. And that might be different than how your nervous system talks to you. So, this is all about first getting people comfortable with recognizing they have a body,
Hmm?
feeling, oh, I see my fingers, I see my hands, I see my shoulders, I can move my arms. This is my body. I have control over my body. And then it's through that love process where we start to learn how your nervous system speaks to you in certain situations. So for me, anytime I'm stressed, my gut, my stomach gets so bloated and so tight and tense. And the instant I feel that sensation, it's a like a switch. I'm like, oh no, I'm feeling stressed right now. Okay. I need to take a minute to acknowledge that, to reflect what's really making me stressed right now. Or when I would feel like I was being, or when I felt like it wasn't safe for me to speak up, I would feel it in my throat. It would feel like I can't swallow. Okay, I'm going to give this part of me a
That's
lot of
your
love.
that's your energy system there. It's a chakra, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
So the way my nervous system tells me how I'm responding or how I'm interacting with the world, again, is different than how yours might. And so it's teaching people how to tune in and start to become aware of those subtle alerts from our nervous system, those subtle changes in our nervous system that can help guide them into how they can support themselves.
Okay. So I like that. Right. Yes. All right. So the question I have here is, and I think I heard you mention it briefly, but I listened carefully. What is the connection between childhood trauma and chronic health disease? You talked about you having autoimmune health conditions.
Mhm.
So I think I probably know the answer to this because stress, and inflammation is the start of maybe all diseases. I can probably put that word in there, all,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you're specifically saying childhood trauma. So
Mhm.
what is the
Yes.
connection?
Yeah. So when we're a child and, our natural responses when we're under stress and we feel like our life is under threat, let's say, our natural responses are to fight, flight, or freeze. And when we're a child, if we're in an environment that's abusive or traumatic, and I'll just use mine as an example, being abused sexually, I was not able to fight or flee. And what happens when we are a child is our body goes through a process when we feel like we're being threatened. And it goes through a process where it activates our stress hormones. It changes our body and puts us into a sympathetic state to ready us to do those things of fight, flight, or freeze. But when we can't, when we're impaired and we have to stay frozen in that situation, our body's natural processes don't shut off. They continue to be elevated in that stress response. And so what happens over time, if we are constantly experiencing that stress over and over, it changes our biology in that we become more sensitive to stress. We get stressed faster and faster and faster every time that happens. And it starts to create this low grade stress response in our bodies and in our brains. And so it affects not just our physical body, but it changes the neurochemistry in our brain because of that constant assault of the stress hormone running through our body. And that stress hormone running through our body constantly over and over through childhood and then into adulthood, where we have maybe more responsibilities or we have more things that we have to be worried about. It starts to really degrade our system because the stress hormones are meant to be short bursts to
Yeah.
help us get out of that environment. They're not meant
Yeah.
to be long term. So just like you were saying, that inflammation over time
Mhm.
deteriorates our gut health, deteriorates our immune system, deteriorates our hormones, deteriorates our ability to digest food. It impacts every part of our system.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's what's going on right now with the world because right, we are the stress response was programmed into humans to run away from a tiger or
Yes.
if something is chasing you.
Yes.
It wasn't meant
Totally.
for us to live with it daily. And I understand what you're saying as a child because as an adult, let's say that we're in a sexually abusive relationship, right? Um, we have the ability to pack our bags and leave. And as a
Yeah.
child, you're right. There's nothing actually you can do because you have no control. So
Yes.
you definitely, sit there and be scared to sleep at night, thinking that somebody's going to come in your door.
Yes.
And yeah, so there's right. So I can understand how that changes your whole biology. And let's say 30 years later, you're actually in a relationship that's healthy. You probably can't even enjoy it because you're still so tightly bound,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. We train those early experiences really train our body of how to respond to stress.
Mhm.
And it's a survival mechanism. I mean, it's a very important part of our survival process. But over time, yeah, we get to a point where our bodies are just soaked in stress hormones, soaked in that inflammation. And wherever we have a weak point in our body is most likely the place in which we develop some type of chronic health issue. So, if your weak point is your pancreas, maybe you develop diabetes. If your weak point is your thyroid, maybe you develop thyroid disease. So that the autoimmune condition looks different or the health issue looks different, but the root of it really can often stem from what happened in childhood. And I will just also add, there are some people I've worked with who said, I didn't have like an abusive home. I didn't have trauma like that. And what I often share with them is, you could have had what you thought were good parents, but maybe they weren't able to meet your needs as a child. And just in that environment of not feeling like your needs have been met, that can develop shame, that can develop a guilt around maybe I'm not good enough or I don't fit here or I don't, you know, I'm not like these people, I'm different. And now I have shame around that. And there's uncertainty around how they can meet my needs or not meet my needs. That can start to develop a stress response in the body and inflammation, and also lead to chronic health issues.
Yeah. It's very interesting. That is absolutely so unusual, because you're right. The kids that grew up in the white picket fence houses with the mom and dad, and they also have trauma, because what?
Yes.
Dad is never home, and
Yes.
maybe the mom is, out, I don't know, at the gym or something.
Maybe
You
not
know what I mean?
emotionally available, right?
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
not emotionally available. And so it's really very interesting, the spectrum. I love when you talk about your daughter, how she had the spectrum from,
Yeah.
bliss to anger. And that's the same spectrum of our childhood. And
Yes.
regardless of where we fall in that spectrum, you can find trauma. And
Yes.
even when you have, beautiful parents, they're emotionally available, then now everybody's talking about bullying. You go to school and the kids bully
Yes.
you. And I mean, it's, listen, yes, there's trauma. And,
Mhm.
there's so many things that are good right now in the world. And one of the things that's good right now in the world is that people don't have to go to their debt, figuring out what was wrong with them. There's coaches like yourself that, I speak to every week, that that have, a skill level or a niche, and they're helping specific people to let go of all those things that, destroy the quality of their lives. Because,
Yeah.
let's talk about you. You were in this dark hole, didn't want to live, and
Mhm.
and now, look where you are. Somebody helped you through that process,
Yeah.
and whatever you learn, you teach. I love it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at first, my business was really focused on chronic health issues and helping people recover from that. And, I shied away from talking about trauma because I was like, I don't think people want to hear about my story or, you
Of course
know,
they do.
and
Yes.
it was a
Mhm.
journey for me to get here and really own the fact that of like, yeah, actually that's my experience. And I have a
Actually,
lot
it's a
of,
powerful story. I don't know why you didn't think people would want to
I,
listen. Powerful story. Yeah.
shame probably.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I've
Yeah.
been there. Been there. Right. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen. All right. So tell us a little bit more about your work with, the love methodology, the soothing way to heal many trauma. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you to get your help if they're experiencing any kind of trauma that they need help with. Talk about your website, talk about your social media handles, and this is the time where we talk about your work.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, I share that methodology in a few different ways. So I do corporate speaking, and oftentimes I love to reach out to companies who are interested in helping develop their employees through health and wellness in a manner of helping them manage their stress, learning how to regulate their nervous systems. And in those talks and in those workshops, I often share this love methodology because it's something very simple. You can do even at work. You can do it for 5 minutes, you can do it longer, but it's an empowering tool that can help you start to take control over experiences that might feel like you don't have control, and it can help you try to limit and shift how you are triggered in the workplace.
Mhm.
So that's one place in which I share that. And then I also work one-on-one with people and do healing sessions. And so in those healing sessions, we will leverage this methodology sometimes in one session altogether, and other times maybe it's introduced over a series of sessions depending on where someone is at. And then here locally where I'm at, and I hope by the next 6 months, I'll be able to do it in different locations across the country. I do guided hiking sessions where we hike and
Where are you
heal.
at?
I'm in
Where are you
Colorado.
at? Sorry?
Colorado.
Nice. That's a great place to
Yes.
be.
So I lead these guided hike and
Just the
heal
mountains
sessions.
alone. All you need to do is look at those and you're
Yes.
healed.
I know. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful
Yes.
place.
Okay. Mhm.
But I leverage the methodology in those sessions as well. What I would love to share with your audience is on my website, you can actually get a free free download to a video and a workbook that goes over this love methodology. So that's on the front page of my website. My website is mandylharvey.com. And there you can find out all about me, all about there's a
Did you
few
say
other
M or L?
Mandy L. Harvey.
L. Harvey.
.com. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So there's
And
all
what?
sorts of stuff on there that you can find about me, how to work with me, and about my story as well, where to find me out in media. All that stuff is located there. And Instagram, I'm Mandy L. Harvey as well.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. I loved our conversation.
I did too. Yes.
Yes, and I shouldn't say I love it because it was, it was that, it's a hard story. I mean, I started getting chills like seconds into your story. Um, but it's a conversation of where I was then to where I am now, and I love the journey
Thank
that the people take. It is and you come on a podcast, a radio show, television, your story and our conversation we blasted, and it gives people hope. It gives people hope because if
you.
they're in a situation right now or they've been through it, they know that they can get hope. So I definitely hope that you guys would connect with Mandy, reach out to her on our website. If you didn't get that, it's Mandy L. Harvey. I would have a link to her website on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us, as well as a transcript of my conversation with Mandy, and also link out to her social media pages. And definitely take advantage of her free download that she's offering, because yes, I'm speaking to her right now, and I know that trust me, if you've been through the journey that she has been through, she has got some stuff to share to help you on your journey as well. So, Mandy,
Thank you.
thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story and giving everyone hope that it's a process, and sometimes you need help to get through it. I love your analogy of, bringing peace into it. You're feeling it, and then you're bringing peace like a wave into
Yes.
it. So
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, as we wrap up, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I think from what I'd like to just share is for everyone out there listening, whatever place you're in your process, whether you are further along in your healing, just starting your healing, or just gaining awareness that maybe there's something to be healed, I just would invite everyone to hold compassion for the place that you're in and give gratitude and thanks for where you're at, even though maybe it doesn't feel so good in the moment, because what has got you here was meant to get you here. And now you can move forward with either that awareness or those extra tools. But it is possible. Healing is possible beyond our even imagination. The amount of healing we're able to get through is available and possible for us all. And sometimes when we go to approach healing, we want to just rush through it and, hold so much like resistance to where we're at today. But I just invite you to hold some little bit of compassion and grace for yourself as you journey through it and honor where you're at today. I think you're all doing great. You're all here listening, which means you know that you have potential to be even better and brighter in this world than you already are.
Beautiful. Well said. Yes. Acceptance. I am studying The Power of Now right now with Eckhart Tolle, and that's what he
I
taught me. You
love
love it,
that
right?
book.
I
Oh
know.
my gosh, I love that book. So good.
It's It is so good. And yeah, I'm studying it now, and I'm like working on mine now. I'm like working on it very hard.
I
So
love it.
yes, acceptance, the power of now, compassion, healing, because according to Eckhart, that is the portal, that is the doorway. You can't go anywhere without starting from right here, starting
Yes.
from the now. So yes, give yourself compassion, give yourself love, and go check out Mandy's work. All right, guys, listen, thanks for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I love sharing these powerful stories and powerful guests with you every week. If you're listening to this on iTunes, I would love for you to rate and review and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love for you to subscribe as well, so that you'll be front and center every week then I upload new episodes. Mandy, thanks again
Thank
for
you.
sharing your story. Thanks again for coming on the show. Wishing you God's blessing in your work, and I hope that we can bring some healing to a lot of people.
Me too. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Thanks. All right, guys. Well, listen, we have come to the end of the show. Until next time, namaste.